2020 Kerala floods. During the heavy rainfall over the monsoon period from 1 June to 18 August 2020, all 14 districts in Kerala were affected with 104 dead and 40 injured. 5 districts in Kerala were flooded on 7 August 2020: Idukki, Wayanad, Malappuram, Thrissur, and Kottayam. Major reported incidents in relation to flooding include a landslide in Idukki district on 6 August, claiming 66 lives, and an Air India plane crash that caused the death of 21 people. The 2020 flood in Kerala marked the third year in a row of severe monsoon flooding. The state is reeling from the destruction, loss of lives, livestock, and agriculture, and damage to property of approximately 19,000 crore. Kerala State Disaster Management Plan was submitted to the central government to improve the disaster management capacity of the state. Background: geography and rainfall patterns in Kerala. Kerala is located in the southwest of India and has a tropical climate with high annual rainfall caused by monsoon rain patterns. The majority of its annual rainfall, till 80%, occurs during the southwest summer monsoon, where warm winds from the Arabian Sea cause cloud precipitation over the western Ghats mountain range. Average annual rainfall in Kerala is around 300 mm and is caused by high numbers of low to moderate intensity rainfall days. Flood stages and warning systems. Thiruvananthapuram's Early Warning System (EWS) plan of 2016 classifies flood alerts as level 1, 2, or 3. The response to each alert level may include notifying local government, broadcasting to the public, activating response teams, or evacuating high-risk areas. By 9 August 2020, the India Meteorological Department (IMD) had placed 7 districts in Kerala under red alert. Analysis of causes. Weather. Kerala experienced 5 low-pressure systems during the southwest monsoon season in August 2020. This, combined with strong winds over the Arabian Sea, resulted in cloudbursts, which saturated soil structures, further weakening bedrock, overwhelming rivers and drainage systems. Kerala experienced 190% increase in rainfall in the first 10 days of August compared to normal patterns, causing widespread destruction, flooding, and landslides. Coastal towns, such as Cheltenham, dealt with floods as well as rough seas pushing back on rivers, exacerbating flooding. Landslides. An analysis of the most significant landslide in the Pettimudi estate, Munnar, Idukki, found that the area experienced extremely heavy rainfall as classified by the IMD between 3 and 10 August. Rainfall volume peaked at 612 mm, falling on 6 August, with the landslide occurring at 22:45 IST. Categorized as rain-induced debris flow, the landslide was characterized by rapid water flow at a steep gradient, flowing at high velocity from the rocky outcrops through the shola forest, collecting loose material along its course to the tea plantation and workers' living quarters below. Additional landslides occurred in Idukki, Mundakai, Kottayam in Kozhikode, Nillamur in Malappuram, and Kottayam. Impacts and consequences. Direct impacts. The landslide in the Pettimudi estate saw significantly heavy rainfall, resulting in excessive flooding and landslide over a 1.2 km tract. Final reports indicate that it destroyed 4 buildings and killed 66 individuals. Majority of the victims were descendants from the Dalits caste system. Meanwhile, low-intensity mudslides and landslides occurred in other regions. On 7 August, the monsoon rain also caused poor landing conditions at Kerala's Calicut airport. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, only repatriation flights were allowed. On the third landing attempt, Air India Express Flight 1344 crashed after it slid down a 9-10.5 mm slope off the runway, killing both pilots and 19 passengers. Indirect impacts. Search and rescue efforts in this area were stalled due to bad weather conditions. The collapse of the Periyavarai Bridge, which is the only connectivity for interstate transport between Munnar to Mariyar, was also an issue. Authorities reported closure of multiple routes including the Palaira to Petter Road in the Kottayam district where the Meenakil River overflowed into neighboring towns. Destruction of power lines further affected communication links to the area, which caused logistical difficulties in the supply of basic necessities. Evacuation and relocation efforts led to many residing in temporary relief camps. A mild increase in COVID-19 cases was reported in Chelanam's relief camps, complicating the situation. Agricultural produce was also affected with loss of crops, especially in Wayanad, and disruptions to transportation caused an increase in food prices. According to the Ministry of Home Affairs, a total of 1670 villages were affected, 104 lives lost and 40 injured. Short-term health consequences post-flood include injuries and communicable diseases e.g. diarrhea, while long-term impacts includes poor health outcomes due to aspects like malnutrition and mental health issues. Response and relief efforts. National. The primary response at the state and national level was to set up relief camps for the flood affectees. A total of 6,300 camps were arranged in the state. In Kollam alone, 51 camps were set up, one in each taluk. The national government also announced 200,000 to be distributed among families of casualties of landslides caused by the floods and 50,000 provided to the injured, both through the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund. Kerala State Disaster Management Authority KSDMA, police and Indian Air Force actively took part in the rescue operations. To search for missing persons, the National Disaster Response Force NDRF was activated, with around 200 personnel. Fire Force and forest officials also joined the response teams. This task force consisted of 50 Fire Force members specializing in nighttime rescue activities. International. In the aftermath of 2018 Kerala floods, the Indian government refused international aid for relief efforts. They cited sufficient domestic capacity to deal with the disaster, in line with its policy to accept no foreign aid. It is also seen as a measure to portray the image of India being well equipped to address its needs, and thus little international aid is accepted. Organizations and individuals. The rugged terrain of Kerala made relief efforts quite challenging for national and international response teams. To fill this gap, local organizations like RIGHTS, who were familiar with the geography and had deep local connections, rose to the challenge. IAG Kerala and Sphere India assisted in closely monitoring the situation. These grassroots bodies prioritized safeguarding of children and vulnerable populations, putting focus on ensuring their education continues uninterrupted. This was also supplemented by direct cash transfer to their families. Political and social activists also joined in the efforts in their personal capacities. Phoebe New, the district collector, used his Facebook presence to conduct frequent live sessions to provide updates on relief efforts to the affected population. Flood management. Kerala is vulnerable to multiple hazards with flooding in 2018, 2019, 2020 and 2021, and 43% of the state prone to landslides. Kerala State Disaster Management Plan outlines the need to reduce hazard risk with mitigation, preparedness, response and recovery. Mitigation. Structural measures consist of 81 dams, reservoirs and flood embankments. Non-structural measures include flood hazard mapping and landslide zoning, but larger-scale maps are needed to develop effective mitigation plans. River discharge is monitored at 38 river gauging stations by the Central Water Commission. Kerala has 68 rain gauging stations, but the Bureau of Indian Standards recommends 265 to sufficiently monitor rainfall. Preparedness. IMD monitors weather, and Kerala State Emergency Operations Center KCAC issue color-coded extreme weather alerts. KSDMA provides public alerts through their website and social media platforms. KCAC is working with the Geological Survey of India, Kerala University and Kerala Development and Innovation Strategic Council to develop a landslide early warning system. In 2020, 14 permanent multipurpose shelters were constructed by KSDMA with funding from the World Bank. Civil defense systems have increased training to support search and rescue efforts, and the government has given greater autonomy to local agencies and NGO. Response. Pause. Operations involve the implementation of disaster event preparations from Rapid Action Force RAF, NDRF, and Kerala Fire and Rescue. During the floods, NDRF set up 6,300 relief camps with COVID-19 categorization. COVID-19 restrictions resulted in fewer vector-borne diseases. Experts initially warned of increased risk of dengue in 2020, but Kerala registered 5 dengue deaths, a decrease from 2018 and 2019. Recovery. Damage and cost estimates are made prior to reconstruction with funding from the state and national disaster response funds. KSDMA published a handbook on constructing flood and landslide resilient housing. Further national and international assistance may be sought by the state. Recommendations. Implementation of sponge cities, increase hydrometric network coverage and improve data reliability, reduce rates of deforestation in upland areas and encourage reforestation, increase flood-resistant buildings. Critiques of flood response plans. The response to the 2020 floods incorporated lessons from previous years by increasing the use of social media to broadcast flood warnings to the community, releasing water from dams earlier in the monsoon season, and establishing evacuation camps for those in high-risk areas. Despite improvements being made, Kerala's flood alert system has been heavily critiqued for its inadequacy in responding to flood situations in a timely and coordinated fashion.